I don't know what would have happened if the voice hadn't been heard then. It would be anybody's guess, but the voice came the day after Alpha Centauri vanished. I first heard it on my way to the store. I was walking down Lexington Avenue from the 59th Street station, looking in the dress windows to see what my competitors had to offer. Just as I was passing Mary Bell's frocks and wondering how soon they'd have their summer line in, I heard it. It was a pleasant voice, friendly. It seemed to come from just behind me, about 3 feet over my shoulder. "Judgment of the inhabitants of the planet Earth," it said, "will be held in 5 days. Please prepare yourselves for final examination and departure. This announcement will be repeated." I looked around at once to find out who was speaking. I half expected to find a tall, cadaverous fanatic at my shoulder, some fiery-eyed fellow with flowing hair and a beard. But there was no one at all. The nearest person was about 15 feet from me. For a moment I thought I was having a hallucination, hearing voices, that sort of thing. Then I saw that everyone else must have heard it too. Lexington Avenue is a pretty busy place at 9 o'clock in the morning. There are plenty of people hurrying back and forth, kids going to school, subways roaring beneath you, cars and buses honking. Not now. You couldn't hear a sound. Every car had stopped right where it was. The people on sidewalks seemed frozen, practically in mid-stride. The man nearest me walked up. He was well-dressed, about my age, in his early 40s. He was eyeing me with suspicion, as though I might have been responsible for the whole thing. I suppose I was looking at him in the same way. "Did you hear it?" he asked me. "Yes," I said. "Did you do it?" "No. Did you?" "Most certainly not," he said indignantly. We stood for a few seconds just looking at each other. I think everybody knew right there and then that this was no hoax. With the stars disappearing, I mean. A pretty girl in a fur coat walked up to me. She was young. She looked scared and very defiant. "Did you hear that?" she asked us. "Yes," I said, and the man nodded. "Is it possible that she was operating on a loudspeaker?" the girl asked. "She," we both said. "That woman's voice," the girl said, looking a little exasperated. "A young woman," she said. "Judgment of the inhabitants." "It was a man's voice," the man said. "Of that I'm certain." He looked at me and I nodded. "Oh, no," the girl told us. "A girl. She even had a slight New England accent. It was unmistakable." She looked around for support. The people on Lexington Avenue had gathered in small groups. There were knots of people up and down the sidewalks as far as I could see. The cars still weren't moving. Most of the drivers had gotten out to ask someone else about the voice. "Say, pardon me," some man said to me. "Am I hearing things, or did you hear—" That's how it was for the next hour. Everyone, it seemed, had heard it. But every woman was sure it had been a woman's voice, and every man was sure it had been a man's. I left finally and went to my store. Minnie, the salesgirl, and Frank, my stock boy, were already there. They had the radio on, but they were talking over it. "Say, Mr. Osterson," Frank called as I walked in, "did you hear it?" I sat down and discussed it with them, but we couldn't tell each other much. Frank had been in the store when he heard it. Minnie had been walking in, her hand on the doorknob. Minnie was sure it was a girl's voice, about her own age, with just a trace of a Bronx accent. Frank and I held out for a man's voice, but where I was sure the man was in his early 40s or late 30s, Frank was positive it was a young man about 20 or 22. We noticed the radio finally. It had been broadcasting all that time, but we hadn't paid any attention. "Voice was heard in all parts of the country at 9:03 this morning, Eastern Standard Time. This voice, purporting to be that of the deity announcing the Judgment Day, was heard in all parts of the country." The voice hesitated, then continued. "In